Welcome to Connect.Vegas. We feature conversations with Las Vegas creators and leaders, learn about their work, and explore our shared love of our favorite city. And now, welcome our host, Ben Laifsky.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Connect.Vegas. My name is Ben Laifsky. I'm coming to you tonight to introduce a conversation with my client, Jeanette Jones of Cottrill Research. Jeanette is a librarian by trade and professional researcher, and I find it just fascinating what she does. When the internet was new, everyone thought it would democratize access to information, that everything would get easier. And to some extent that happened. But what's more true now is that the internet is like the ocean, and people dump in the ocean on a pretty regular basis. So you can find what looks like information, but how do you know what's the real thing? We go through that in our news, where different news sources are night and day to each other about the same topics. Jeanette, for her clients, helps do competitive and market research to help them really understand what's going on in their worlds. And a lot of times the one with the best data makes the best decisions and they win. So her role is extremely significant. I only can imagine that it's become more and more difficult to be really great at that, but Jeanette's really great at it. So I hope you enjoy this conversation and find it as interesting and as illuminating as I did. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Connect Vegas. I'm here with Jeanette. Jeanette, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Certainly. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm really delighted to be here to talk with you. Yes, my name is Jeanette Jones, and I am founder of Cottrill Research. The company was founded at the very end of 2012. My background leading up to the founding of Cottrill Research is basically stems from my many years of doing complex, high-level corporate research for very large organizations such as Arthur Andersen, Bank One, JP Morgan Chase, and Wachovia. So in those positions, they hired me to come in. Let me back up a little bit if that's okay. I do have a master's of library science. So as soon as I got out of my master's program, I was lucky enough to get hired by Arthur Andersen. Now, this is back in the late 80s. I'm showing my age. But they hired me to come in. Their library was, I think I can say it, it was a mess and needed a professional librarian. Now, remember, back then, organizations and corporations, almost all of them had some type of a library, and these were called specialized or corporate libraries. Arthur Andersen, all the big 8 accounting firms had libraries functioning with professional librarians in all of their offices. So I was brought into the Columbus, Ohio office to go ahead and set up their library. Now, this at the time, the late 80s, was when everything was still in binders on shelves. So, for example, all of you that do Gartner research, believe it or not, those were actual loose leaf binders. All of you that use probably Moody's or S&Ps, anything like that, it started off as binders on the shelf. I was lucky enough to get in right when the transition was going from print to online. And Ben, I don't know, are you old like I am, that the modem, remember turning the modem on and the screeching noise? Anyway, so you had the Wall Street Journal, you had Dow Jones, you had LexisNexis, all of these larger publishers. Arthur Andersen is an accounting and an information consulting company going to electronic, and I was right there with it. So all of us at that time were able to go through that, and we became kind of pioneers in understanding how to do this funky thing called online research. So I set up the library. It was all book-based. And then I knew, oh my gosh, there is a world of information that consultants and auditors and tax people need that's not contained in our little paper library. So then I developed a research function. And that research function was going out, dialing out, and getting to these wonderful online news sources. So I set up the research function. I went go right now and then go to the banks. I did the same thing for the banks. I set up physical libraries, bank one for their IT contracts, and then immediately set up those online research functions. That's where the value was. And that's where I got all my experience. So fast forward to today, I decided I wanted to go out on my own and do my own research for companies. And that's why Cottrill Research was founded.
And if it's possible to generalize, could you talk about the type of customer that you work with today?
Absolutely. I wish I could say the names. I do sign NDAs. Most of my clients don't want others to know that I'm researching for them. I do a lot of competitive intelligence, but then I can tell you that I do a lot of startups. So I've had to really get my expertise down for how to search for companies that I call are not even on the market map. So even before there's actually an industry, they're out there brand new. I can get into that a little bit more. So I have startups all the way up to large publicly held companies.
Is it
I could industries if you're interested. Like I've done home design, construction, chemical manufacturing, legal, and public safety are some of the industries I've worked in.
Is it a standard part of their business that they work with someone like yourself, or is there an event that precedes an engagement with you? Is it a timing thing, or is it just a normal course of events that they work with you?
I wish it was more of a normal thing that organizations would understand that there's those of us out here that are really proficient and expert in getting specialized information. I don't think enough companies know that, or they feel, and right, maybe rightly so, that they have the intelligence already in their organization. And they do. I'm not saying that. My clients have all come to me because there's been a pain point or there is something that they need me to do that they don't have the time to do. They don't, yeah, the time. So every single time. And then my clients are word of mouth. I don't really go out and do much marketing. I'm very lucky that I'm able to, and I do accept clients I like working with. And if I think the client's not going to be somebody to work with, I don't. So I'm very lucky that way.
All right. I want to pivot back to your earlier days. Maybe you could tell us where you grew up and some of your hobbies and interests when you were just starting out.
Oh, of course. I grew up, I had an ideal childhood. I grew up in a town called Marietta, Ohio, which was the first settlement in the Northwest Territory. So it's extremely historic. It's where the Ohio River and the Muskingum rivers connect. So that's probably why the pioneers decided to settle there. There were two Indian groups that were there, the Hopewells, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the other. They left a lot of natural mounds all over Marietta, and luckily they did save a lot of them. Beautiful town. It's a college town, Marietta College. My mother worked at the college, so I hung out there all the time. I then moved to Columbus, Ohio, and met my husband, Don, and then we had moved to Dallas with his job. And from Dallas, we came here to Las Vegas because he got a teaching position at UNLV, and it was just too good of an opportunity to give up. Okay, what do I like? Growing up, like I said, it was ideal. I was in ballet for a very long time, and then I became a lifeguard. I was a sun bunny. I loved swimming, so I was a lifeguard as well. Those were the two interests when I was growing up.
And perhaps what were some of your early jobs?
Okay, I don't know if this is true or not, but I did when I was 9 or something. I delivered the Columbus Dispatch in to Marietta, and I think it was the Sunday paper, and I only had literally like 12 houses all through Marietta. So they said that I was the first paper girl they ever hired. Now I cannot remember if that's true or not. But yeah, so I delivered newspapers of all things, and I spent every single dime I made on chocolate ice cream cone. coming home. And then, like I was a lifeguard for that. And then I worked at the little five and dime on the breaks from college. And again, this wonderful small town that I grew up in.
And how did you go from ballet and lifeguard to a life of research? What led you
Yeah,
to?
I've always been a reader and I've always loved going to the library. And I just fell into it then. My undergraduate was in education, elementary education, but I graduated from Kent State and it was up in Hudson, Ohio, North Ohio at the time. There was no jobs. This was like 1980 and there were no jobs and I didn't have much money. So I hung out at the library. I just hung out and I read and read and I hung out so much an opportunity came to get a job at there. And I started in public librarianship. And from there, then that's what spurred getting my master's. And then out of master's, I just thought, why not? This Arthur Andersen had the job announcement and I thought, I think I can do this. Why not? Best decision I ever made.
That's wonderful. Let's come back to your current services that you offer. You mentioned, I believe you mentioned competitive research. Maybe you could talk about one or two of the different types of research you offer and what the scope of an engagement includes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me start quickly with the scope. That's one thing that I really focus on with my clients is to make sure they get exactly what they want. Most of my clients are extremely sophisticated, and I love it when they give me a research project and it's very specific, answering this question. But a lot of it, since a first time client, they don't know themselves. I'll be honest with you. Exactly. They know they've got a competitor, for example, that this blindsided them that's come from nowhere. And all of a sudden they're up against proposals and with this company they've never heard of. And it shakes you a little bit like, geez, I thought I knew the market. I thought we knew our competitors. And, what happened? So that's at one of those pain points. So basically, if word of mouth, like I have two or three clients I just constantly do projects for. But if it's a new client or whatever, they contact me, we have a conversation. The way I work is I charge a flat fee. I feel that's more advantageous to the client. An hourly fee in research, to my mind, just does not work out. I don't know. I don't know how long the research is going to take. I'm going to be honest with you. And I don't want to get crazy by, oh, I'm racking up the hours. So I do an estimation in my head. It's just how long it's going to take me. I give them the flat fee. It never goes above that, never. And I tell them the exact day when it's going to be ready, and it always is. I'm never late. So that's it, and it works out. It always works out. Now, Cottrill Research, we provide two specialized services. Like I said, supply markets, and then the competitive intelligence. And the supply market research, a lot of people don't understand what that is, and I get it. Basically, it's when a company buys any product or service, it is researching the market where that product or service comes from and who's in the landscape, who is the best supplier, risks all around that. So most companies buy direct and indirect. So that really depends on your diligence as well. Because if you are a supplier and you are relying on one or two suppliers that are bringing in your raw materials, and if they shut down or if something happens to them by any type of a risk event, you're in trouble. So can I give you an example? COVID. When COVID hit, most of the general population learned about supply chains, how critical it is for supply chains to be able to do their thing and to get the supplies. So this is such a critical need. It's exploded that area. The direct and indirect spend, like I talked about, every company, you have your direct. Those are the spend with the products that come in and directly go into the product you're making. So cars, right? It's going to be the rubber, the metal, the glass, plastics, the leather for the seats. It goes on and on. Indirect is going to be the services that keeps your company going. So that could be marketing, HR, legal services, staplers, printers, things like that. And then competitive intelligence is where I find I'm getting most of my work from these days. And it is basically companies wanting to know who their competitors are, who's coming up, who's innovating in the area, where are they all positioned, and what is going on in the market, what's coming up next, so we are not caught off guard.
Couple questions just off of what you said. Is it easier or harder today to find authoritative information? Is it because we've got an ocean of data, but there's a lot of stuff out there that's not the good stuff. So
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, just how do you discern what is the right data sources? What are the right data sources to use?
I thank you for that question because it is right now, right? It is so important. That is where Cottrill Research, I can honestly, bottom of my heart, tell you this is where we excel. Kelly Barner and I wrote a book on supply market intelligence, and that was 10 years ago. And one chapter was dedicated to how to find and understand authoritative research. It's that important. Little did we know 10 years from now, 10 years from then, that it's so relevant, such a hot topic. And we have written about it all through these 10 years. We have developed guidelines on simple guidelines on how business researchers or anybody who consumes information to make important decisions. How do you look at the information to decide if it's authoritative or not? So I just wrote a post that on misinformation and media bias, because that's what we're starting to see. 10 years ago, it was like, remember when people were putting up hoax websites, really silly websites about things? And it was misinformation back then was, how do you find a website that's a hoax? Aren't they a hoax? Now it's a whole different ballgame. Now it's about media bias and people putting out information for intentional reasons of misreading. So my research has changed because of it as well. But that is where Kelly and I come because we are both professionally librarian trained. Even though we've gone into the business world, we've come up through getting our Master of Library Science. So that is embedded in us. That's all library science is, understanding how to gather information. But what we're seeing now with media bias, and it's forced business researchers to look at our own biases. You have to be critical, you have to be more active in your critical thinking. So now, and when I do my research, you have to research your source just as diligently as you research the topic that you're researching. Now, I love this quote by All Sides, which is a wonderful company that you can find out if a publication leans to the left or leans to the right. And I'm not judging or saying anything negative, but their quote is, everyone is biased, and that's okay. But the problem is when information is intentionally withheld, so you are not getting the full picture or the right picture. So now when I do research, I go to the website of the source. I find their methodology statement or their about page. I figure out, okay, are they left leaning, right leaning? And they'll say it. If it's a credible organization, they'll tell you their editorial standpoint. Or you go to All Sides and you get an actual rating. All Sides is very good. I highly recommend them. I put a bias statement in my research. So if I find information that I feel is valuable, it's of high quality, it's current, from an authoritative source, all the checklist of things you look for. But that is a biased resource. I'll say, note, this source has a bias rating and then it is more of left of center or right of center. Then I let that person who I'm doing the research for decide if they're going to use it. Now, that's just one way that you can handle evaluating for misinformation. How do I know the resources to select? Again, that is where I really feel like Cottrill Research excels. Remember when I told you about researching, setting up libraries way back in the late 80s? All those resources are still around, believe it or not. They've just evolved, they've acquired, they've been purchased. And by understanding that, and then by keeping up with all of the new resources that are popping up, and it's continuous, You got to know what's out there. You have to be up to date. And a lot of companies rely on one or two or three very expensive providers, and they're not getting the the newer companies that are coming in with different angles with fresh information. And I do write a lot about new resources, and that's how I stay up to date is by finding new things to write about.
I think that's fascinating. I want to turn to the startup world, which is just exciting, but also very difficult to judge, at least in my view. Like you don't always know who's speaking from these are our capabilities versus these are our aspirations. It's hard to tell. And it's measured in months and sometimes years and not years and decades. How do you, um, how do you look into startups and report on any aspect of that world?
Yeah, that it's fun. It's fun. Okay, so startups, it depends on what stage they're in with their funding. What series are they in? That's a big thing. That if it's brand new and they're still looking for seed money, that's the hard, that's the really difficult part. And I'm going to plug a couple: CB Insights, TechCrunch, PinchBook, and Crunchbase. They all do really good. I mean, I will go to them for those seed rounds. But it depends on if your startup is operating in stealth mode or if they're out there open with it. Now, I find most founders are out there open. They're out there talking. They'll take any interview they can get. They'll be on any podcast. They'll go to any trade show. They will allow themselves to be interviewed by small town newspapers. That's a good place to find stuff like this. I don't find if a founder who really loves their company and it really cares about market product fit, that's how they're finding it by going out and talking about it, getting that feedback in. So that I like that because I can find some pretty good stuff. Now the stealth folks are a different story. They're stealth for a reason, and their reasons are good. And boy, if you ever wanted to have fun, start talking with somebody about, is it better to go stealth or to be out there in the open? Because there's really strong opinions about this. But people stay in stealth because they want to have their product perfect when it comes out. They don't want their intellectual property stolen. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. But you lose out on that product market fit. Um, Sorry about this. Goodness. Anyways, so the stealth is a different animal. There's techniques that you can do for that. I've heard a big post on it. If like Company's House, if you're a company in UK and the Company's House is a registrar for all companies, if you see someone's dormant, that probably could be a sign of somebody in stealth. LinkedIn is a fantastic source for finding. You will see a lot of people out there that will say founder of such and such company in stealth mode. Patents, um, uh, just trying to see who's writing a lot, maybe in an industry in a new area. Maybe they're out there, they're being quiet. So it's a little bit of a challenge. There's no one formula for finding that. I hope that answered your question.
Very much. All right. I want to move to a question. What is something people misunderstand about what you do or they don't really understand?
Yeah, I think when those of us that do this very specialized research, I really think people, especially when Google came, and that was a death knell to corporate libraries because CEOs, oh, we can just do Google now. So the event of Google and everybody being able to do their own research is wonderful. But it's like now people are doing their own research. Oh, I can do it. We don't need to hire anybody with this specialized. Yeah. So that is, I think that there's not a full understanding of, indeed, we know the resources and we've known them for years and see them evolve and see who buys them. And I think that's a misunderstanding is that it's just understanding what an information professional does and what our strengths are. And that is our knowledge of resources and how to research them. And if there's amazing market research firms, but you know what? They're very expensive. So if a company is going to spend money on expensive market research firms, that's only two or three sources that they're pooling. And it's the same research as everybody else is getting. And they're not allowing themselves to be introduced to, there's this niche publication that's right in your area. They're writing about specifically what you're struggling with. A big data aggregator doesn't do that at all. So it's that. I think it's just probably with anybody else, though. I'm sure with you, Ben. I'm sure it's the same thing in your area, not understanding the years of practice and the expertise that you've built up.
You mentioned the rise of technology, especially Google and search. How have the large language models and those technologies impacted either what you do or people's perception of it?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to be honest with you. I have not had the time to explore the LLMs the way that I need to. I'm just not going to. My first go around with them, I was very disappointed. That was, of course, the very first one, the Chat GPT and the very first version of theirs. One thing in my research is anything that I pull from any source, I put the in-text citation in the link and then also works cited page. I provide a source for every sentence practically. And I'm not seeing, at least what I'm seeing right now, and I haven't looked into this, so I'm sure it's out there. So I do worry about the source material when you're doing this. But I am familiar. And one of my clients actually developed a co-pilot, an AI co-pilot for their service. And so I was very lucky because I really got my hands in it and was in it. So I do understand the power it has and what it can do. And I have nothing but excitement for the technology.
All right. Is there anything else we should know about your work or that perhaps we didn't touch on?
Oh boy, I'm just really, again, the value, I think the Cottrill Research, that I know Cottrill Research and why the clients keep coming back is that we pull up nuggets and different ways of looking at things that are not found through what normal data aggregators. I'm not bashing them whatsoever, but we really do pull up things that I know, and I've been told many times, we just did not see that. And that really was key to understanding something. So I think that's probably the one thing I'd like to say. I'll probably remember a million things after the podcast, but
Let's pivot to some more personal items. What's a book you recommend or perhaps that you've given most often as a gift?
yeah, I'm an avid reader, obviously, with my background. I love fiction. I like memoirs. I'm not much of I certainly know business books out there, but books I've given in the past, I probably have given maybe Into Thin Air by John Krakauer. I love that book. It's now the story everybody knows about it, but when it first came out and the way he writes, he just puts you going up Mount Everest and what it's like to breathe and how you can barely breathe and what it feels like. I also love and Lonesome Dove.
Yes.
I will give that. If anybody has not read that, please read it. I love books that have a strong sense of time and place. And I love books or memoirs where individuals are faced with real hardships and how they overcome them. And those are what I tend to really be drawn to. Like Killer Angels. I know that's a novel, but face it, that's really brings the Civil War to you in a way that I just don't think a pure nonfiction book can quite do.
All right. And now we have some Las Vegas questions for you.
Okay, good.
How long have you been in Las Vegas and how has it changed from your first experiences?
Well, we came in 2010 and it was right in the recession. It was when it was really, it was hard. It was the recession. And my husband said, "Hey, there's only way that the economy is just going to go up. It's the only way it can go." I can remember so distinctly, well, as soon as we got moved in, we were out exploring. And I can remember going to Town Square and the district, Green Valley. We live in Henderson. And there was nobody there. Now, this was during the week and it was in December, but there really was. We'd have those sidewalks, everything to ourselves. Now you go and it's fantastic. There's all kinds of people. You can't get parking spots. And all the businesses are doing well. So I have to say that probably is, I think what's changed is the economy and the grossness, boy, the growth, the population growth, the expansion everywhere, and also, of course, the housing developments that are popping up. The economic growth in this area is just unbelievable.
All right. And are there favorite groups or organizations that help you connect with other people in the Valley?
When I first founded Cottrill Research, I was heavy into the chambers. And as a matter of fact, I got my very first client from an event at the Vegas Chamber. And I got one of my first large publicly held clients through a Henderson chamber event. I also was very active with Institute of Supply Management. They've changed their name now to like Nevada Purchasing something, but I want to still be active. I think COVID, I stopped going to more live events and this is awful to say. I shouldn't even say it. I literally have become so busy with client work that getting out and about is something I need to work on. But the chambers I found to be amazing and fantastic.
All right.
And I need to look into what you're doing too, Ben. That in all seriousness, you got a lot of cool stuff going on.
Thank you very much. Are there any other groups you want to give recognition to that are doing good work in the community?
Oh, public libraries are amazing. Henderson libraries, Las Vegas, Clark County libraries, the services that they provide. I think people that have not been to a library for a long time would be stunned. And they provide really good business support, business databases. So if you are a new company that's starting off and you don't have the funds for a budget, they have both Henderson and Las Vegas Clark County have amazing business databases that you can use, and it's for that purpose. And even if you are a company that's well established, you might not have the budget or to buy these services. And what the public library does, of course, what they do with children's programming, getting children reading, the cultural programs, they do all kinds of international programs to help you understand new cultures. Henderson Libraries just did one book. I think the second year of doing that, where the whole community reads a book, and this year it was based in India. So they had a program of Indian cooking and things like that. So I just love the mission statement and what public libraries do.
That's wonderful. They also have wonderful event spaces in all of those libraries. They're just fantastic facilities.
And I'd like to also say, and I'm speaking from Henderson here, their parks and recreation department they have the most amazing facilities to go work out or walk the track or whatever you want to take a class, a cooking class or line dancing or Zumba. It is that we have wonderful services in this area.
Couldn't agree more. All right. Now we have our tough question. What is your favorite meal in Las Vegas?
All right. We tend to like old school Vegas Italian. Cafe D'Amore have you been there? It's,
Not in
uh,
many years.
Casa D'Amore. Sorry, I knew that didn't
Thank you.
sound right. Oh, what a great place that is. That is just, the food is good and it's old school. And then also Bootlegger is one that we always tend to make sure we go back to frequently. There's a new place in Old Henderson called Azura, RA, I believe. And they're in Old Henderson and they're new. And I'll tell you what, the food is spectacular. It's very good. So that's my new favorite. Okay, that's all I can come up with the top of my head.
All right. What are some favorite spots to view Las Vegas?
So we live in Anthem and Solera, and have you ever heard of the NV Energy Trail? And in that part, I hadn't either till we moved here. Anyways, one part of the trail, you go up this massive hill, and at the top of the hill, you have a whole view of Las Vegas. It's just stunning. So that's probably, if I can make it up that hill, and I am a hiker, we do a lot of hiking. And then I have to say, the Eiffel Tower restaurant, have you been there?
Mhm.
It's and the way that the tables are set in the restaurant, there's like this one big point, and if you sit at one of those tables at the point, you have this magical view of the strip, more close up, but the fountains and that is spectacular. If anybody ever gets a chance to do that.
That's a great one. Our final question, if you could share a phrase or a quote or idea with just millions of people, what would that be?
So when I first started at Arthur Andersen, we had lots of training, and there was an older partner that came in and spoke to us and said, conduct yourself in a way that makes others want you to succeed. And I have lived by that. I don't always succeed, I'll be honest, but I sure try to do that. And I think that was really good advice that serves you well. And then my mother had a couple philosophies that she lived by that as I get older, I find to be really true. And the first one is seek simplicity. And I think as you get older, you understand what that means. It means finding beauty in nature and always look for simplicity, which is funny coming from somebody like me who researches market indexes. It's and about as nerdy data as you can do. But I really think about that all the time. And then also to constantly create. So constantly be starting something new or challenging yourself.
Those are wonderful. In the notes, I'll include how people can contact you, but how would you like people to reach out or follow you online?
Yeah, I would like people to go to Cottrill Research, that's Cottril Research, all one word.com. And I have all kinds of resources on there. I do keep curated collections of very important market indexes. And these cover all areas of economic competitiveness between countries. So if you are researching, if you want to relocate or outsource or expand to a different country, all of these indexes that cover corruption, financial, economical, sustainability, humanity, what countries are treat their citizens in humane ways. So this has been literally years and years of curation. So if you are, I wonder what kind of an index would measure that for me. You might be surprised. So on the website that Ben designed, it's gorgeous. And then my email is Jeanette, Jeanette Jones at Cottrill Research, all one word.com.
All right. And you're also quite prolific in your blogging and that you publish to your website and LinkedIn, which is another great place for people to keep up with what you're working on.
Yes, thank you. And then I do another, and even as if that is not enough, I do another website called Procure Search, all one word. And the book that Kelly and I wrote, Kelly wrote the first on how to set up a supply market intelligence program. I wrote the second part. Actually, we don't just say it, we tell you how to do it, and we list resources. And this is not just for procurement. If you are interested in researching business, and it's literally resource after resource, that's print. We had with the publisher, J. Ross, we were going to keep it up to date, and it was not working that format. So we created this website, and I'm still updating that part of the book. So it's an evergreen section. That information is very hard to find, and that's out there too. It's all open access.
All right. And I really want to thank you for your time and for sharing with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.